What's up, my comic comrades? The sequel series to the 90s X-Men animated series X-Men 97 is almost here, and it's picking up where the original 90s series left off, which could be one of the best ideas ever or one of the worst. Either way, since it's been nearly 3 decades since the original X-Men series finale, let's do a full recap refresher of everything you really need to know heading into X-Men 97. So grab your favorite bowl of cereal and favorite pajama pants, because we're going full Saturday morning cartoons up in this piece. Right off the bat, the number one thing you need to remember is that Professor X is gone. They even made it a huge point to emphasize this in the X-Men 97 trailer, with Magneto saying Charles left him everything in his last will and testament. This is because in the original 90s X-Men animated series, Charles died in the series finale titled Graduation Day. Well, to be fair, he didn't actually die, he just went away, so to speak. So in the series finale, Henry Gyrich, a prominent anti-mutant campaigner, uses an energy disruptor on Xavier, causing his powers to spin out of control, leading him to fall into a coma. The X-Men try everything they can to save Xavier, but ultimately Cyclops, Wolverine, and Jean go to Magneto, and Jean asks Magneto, "How much do you care for Charles?" He responds, "He's my only equal. I owe him my life." Jean says, "What if I told you you're the only one who could save his life?" She tells him a telepathic message to Lilandra, Xavier's romantic partner, and Shi'ar, who possesses advanced tech and science, is Xavier's only hope. You may be able to supercharge his mind since his brainwaves are electromagnetic. Magneto was torn as he was on the brink of victory, reshaping the world with an army of mutants. But ultimately, Magneto's love for Charles prevails, as he does indeed go to Charles' bedside, using his powers to send a supercharged telepathic message to Lilandra. At this point, Charles briefly wakes up and says his heartfelt goodbyes to all the X-Men, saying how proud of them he is. It's pretty heart-wrenching. Ultimately, we see Lilandra gets the message and arrives, telling the X-Men they were correct in thinking that the Shi'ar would have techniques to save Charles. Lilandra says he will survive, but only under Shi'ar care, and that she sympathizes that they can't bear to see him go, but it's the only way he will survive. She then takes Xavier with her to space as the X-Men and Magneto watch him go, with the series ending on that note. So Xavier isn't dead per se, he's just been taken away by Lilandra so that the Shi'ar can save his life. But because he's no longer on Earth, the X-Men are left without a mentor figure, and as we saw in the 97 trailer, Magneto was looking to take the new spot, as apparently Xavier left everything to Magneto, including the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. So that's probably going to be one of the biggest things we see in the X-Men 97 series, how the team has dealt or is dealing with the loss of Charles Xavier, and how they're going to deal with Magneto trying to fill the role of Professor X. But that directly leads me to the next big thing you need to remember going into X-Men 97. As I briefly mentioned, in the finale of the X-Men animated series, Magneto was on the brink of complete world domination, reaching his ultimate goal of mutants controlling the world. He literally tells Jean, when she asks for his help, "You lie to torture me. My legions await my command, pledging body and soul to me. With a single word, I can remake the world." But ultimately, his love and care for Charles Xavier caused him to pause all of that to help save Charles's life. But this is crazy. The only person who was ever really able to keep Magneto in check is Professor X. But now he's gone, and not only is he gone, Magneto now owns everything Xavier's built, and it looks like he's going to be taking over the X-Men. So if you ask me, I think Magneto is going to pick up exactly where he left off in the finale episode, but now he's able to utilize all of Xavier's resources to further his world domination. Which is wild, because he was already going to be successful with world domination, as after Charles Xavier was attacked, a crap ton more mutants rallied on Magneto's side, giving him a considerably sizable army to do with what he pleases. The only question is, will the X-Men be more willing to be on Magneto's side this time around because of what happened to Xavier? I don't think all the X-Men will, but I think there will be a few that are gonna want some revenge. At least that would make for good story beats. The point is, Xavier is gone, and Magneto has everything and more to completely see his plans of mutant domination through, with no one to stop him. So it's going to be very interesting to see how X-Men 97 explores this. Okay, so the next important thing you need to remember heading into X-Men 97 is that Jubilee has basically graduated now, becoming a full-on member of the X-Men. For pretty much the entirety of the series, Jubilee was an X-Men in training. In the very first episode of the series, Night of the Sentinels Part 1, Jubilee is rescued by the X-Men, at which point she is taken under their wing and effectively becomes an X-Men in training. But as she progressed in the series, no episode showed her growth more than in Season 5, Episode 6, titled Jubilee's Fairy Tale Theater. In the episode, Jubilee leads a group of school children through a cave system, but because of some seismic activity, they become trapped in the caves. Jubilee sends an SOS signal to the X-Men to save them and decides to tell the children a fairy tale story to kill time. Ultimately, this episode shows how mature Jubilee has become become, being the one to keep the children calm and making sure they get out of there safe. So the fact that Jubilee came full circle in the episode where she was now the one leading and protecting the children, when originally she was a teenager or youngster being led and protected by the adults, was great to see. At the end of the episode, Professor X even says, "You know, I think our young lady has always been ready for all the adventures to have in this world." With Wolverine saying, "Yeah, but is the world ready for her?" As we see Jubilee run off, ready for adventure. Alluding to the fact that Jubilee is all grown up and ready to handle the world as an adult and as an equal to the X-Men. So with that said, it'll make a lot more sense if we see Jubilee act somewhat differently than we know her from the majority of the original X-Men animated series. Because now she's fully come into her own as a full-fledged X-Men, being the mentor to other young mutants, becoming effectively a full-blown member of the X-Men in the finale Graduation Day. Another big thing to remember is that Morph has rejoined the X-Men as we saw in the 90s X-Men series finale Graduation Day. Yeah, I know, a lot happened in the finale episode, but it's just going to make it all the more interesting to see how a lot of the stuff that happened in that episode plays out in the sequel series. Anyway, Morph easily had one of the best arcs throughout the series. First and foremost, he was killed off, or at least we were led to believe he was, in the second episode of the series, Night of the Sentinels Part 2. He was straight up vaporized by a giant sentinel blast after saving Wolverine while pushing him out of the way, taking the blast himself. But then he was revealed to be alive in the very first episode of Season 2, titled Till Death Do Us Part, Part 1, where he was now under the influence of Mr. Sinister, making him the enemy of his once close friends. Throughout the series, Morph slowly works his way back to being the good mutant he once was, but still refuses to rejoin the X-Men as he isn't fully secure with himself or trusts himself. But this all came full circle as he did end up rejoining the X-Men team in the finale episode. In the episode, he disguises himself as Xavier after Xavier gets attacked by Gyridge on televised TV. He was trying to calm the mutant rioting. It ultimately doesn't work, but it's still a massive act of redemption for Morph nonetheless. But what really brings his story full circle and gives him redemption was Xavier's final words to him as he laid on his deathbed, so to speak. Xavier says, "Morph, it's nice to see you home facing your fears. You have proven yourself truly an X-Man." Morph just listens with tears coming down his face. So it's just nice that X-Men the Animated Series started with Morph as a core member of the team and then ended with Morph as a core member of the team. This is why he will be on the main roster at the start of X-Men 97. Speaking of full-time members of the X-Men, the time traveler Bishop will also be a full-time member of the team in this new series. Now, they're not just throwing Bishop in there all willy-nilly because he's a cool character, but there's more to it than that. Though he wasn't a full-time member of the X-Men in the original 90s series, he did regularly appear throughout the series. I mean, he was a massive part of the series' interpretation of the iconic X-Men story Days of Future Past. The point is, if you didn't watch the original 90s X-Men series, don't be shocked to see him on the team. This is actually a very organic addition to the main X-Men roster since he has an extensive past working with the X-Men throughout the 90s series. Speaking of time-traveling characters, X-Men the Animated Series also introduced Cable. He appeared sporadically throughout the series. He made his first appearance in the episode Slave Island, which was the 7th episode of Season 1. He would also appear in episode 9 of the series, The Cure, and most notably in Season 2, episodes 7 and 8, titled Time Fugitives Part 1 and 2. Now, the reason why I say it's important to remember Cable's involvement in the original series is because, as we saw from the X-Men 97 trailer, Jean is pregnant with Cyclops' baby. And we know Cable's dad is Cyclops, so since Cable is a time-traveling mutant, does that mean X-Men 97 is going to explore Cable as a baby with Jean being pregnant with him? Now, I know what a lot of you are yelling at the screen. That's impossible because Jean isn't Cable's mother in the comics. His mom is a clone of Jean, aka Madeline Pryor, created by Mr. Sinister. But I think if they were smart in the animated continuity, they would just make normal Jean the birth mother of Cable because it would fix a lot of annoying continuity issues and just be way less confusing. The point is, if that is indeed the route they go, which I sure hope it is, it would make all the sense in the world given that Cable was a fan favorite guest appearing character from the original series. And since Bishop is now a main member of the X-Men 97 roster who's also a time-traveling mutant, it only makes sense that Cable shows back up, and maybe he does because at this point in time, Jean is now pregnant with him. Another thing to keep in mind is that Apocalypse has been defeated, but he's not dead. You see, in the 4-part story Beyond Good and Evil from Season 4, Apocalypse got a bunch of sidekicks in the Axis of Time so that he can control the entire timeline. But he was defeated by the X-Men with his consciousness ultimately being trapped in the astral plane. But again, he's just trapped, not dead. And I believe he's going to escape in X-Men 97 and be an important part of the series as Apocalypse is one of the biggest X-Men bads. All I'm saying is if he escapes the astral plane, remember that's because he was trapped there at the end of the Beyond Good and Evil story. And the last thing that everybody needs to remember is that humans and mutants are still not getting along. One could go on to say that it's worse than ever, or at least it appeared to be so at the end of X-Men the Animated Series. Remember, the series ended with an anti-mutant campaigner killing or seemingly killing Professor X, causing a bunch more mutants to get pissed off and rally behind Magneto for world domination. So don't be shocked if X-Men 97 starts off with things in complete and utter chaos. That's not saying they're going to be, because we don't necessarily know what has happened in between the original series and this series yet, but things could very well be starting off in a not so great place. And that also isn't to say that the X-Men haven't tried to promote peace and coexistence. That's what they're all about and Xavier's main motivation. It just didn't work. Regardless, with those key refreshers, you should be ready heading into X-Men 97. It's packed with so many memories for those of us who are 90s kids, and it's definitely got us more excited for the new series. Will it live up to its predecessor? We'll just have to wait and see. But here's hoping they can stick the landing, because if they do, this could potentially lead Marvel to create sequels to other popular 90s Marvel cartoons like Spider-Man the Animated Series. But what about you guys? What are you hoping to see them do with the X-Men 97 series, and are you excited for it? Let us know in the comments. Other than that, we'll see you next time when we give you the history of Thrag.